The morning light streamed through the tall windows of Westlake Surgical Recovery Center as Maya Jenkins made her way down the spotless hallway. The smell of disinfectant hung in the air, a scent she had grown used to in her 8 months as a medical assistant. Her shoes barely made a sound on the polished floor as she pushed her cart of supplies, preparing for morning rounds. Maya loved her job despite the challenges. Growing up in a neighborhood where few people went to college, let alone into healthcare, she had worked twice as hard to get here. Every extra shift, every late night of studying had been worth it, even if some days were harder than others. Today was day 3 of caring for their most important patient. Victor Harrington wasn't just wealthy. He was the kind of rich that meant his name appeared on buildings and in news headlines. The tech billionaire had checked in following what everyone called a routine heart procedure, though Maya knew no heart surgery was truly routine. "Morning, Mr. Harrington," Maya said, knocking softly as she entered his private suite. The room looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital space, with its large windows overlooking the city and expensive furniture brought in specially for his stay. Harrington looked up from his tablet, offering a tired smile. "Good morning." His voice sounded raspier than it had yesterday. "How are you feeling today?" Maya asked, moving to check his vitals. She noticed right away that something seemed off. His color wasn't right. Fine. Just ready to get back to work. These doctors are too careful." He waved his hand dismissively but winced slightly with the movement. Maya nodded politely while paying close attention to his symptoms. As she took his blood pressure and temperature, she noticed his fingernails had a slight bluish tint. Nothing dramatic, but definitely there. His breathing also seemed a bit more labored than yesterday. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, jotting notes in his chart. "On and off," he replied, rubbing his eyes. "Kept waking up. Probably just not used to the bed." Maya paused, watching as he seemed to lose his train of thought mid-sentence. He blinked several times before continuing. "What was I saying? Oh yes, the bed. Too soft." This confusion was new. Maya had seen many patients after heart surgery, and these small signs worried her. Individually, they might not mean much, but together they formed a pattern that raised red flags. "Mr. Harrington, I'm going to note these symptoms in your chart for Dr. Powell to review," she said, keeping her voice calm and professional. "Symptoms? I don't have symptoms," he protested, suddenly looking irritated. "I'm just tired of being stuck here." Maya finished her work quietly, making detailed notes about everything she had observed. The bluish nail beds, the confusion, the labored breathing, the fatigue that seemed worse than yesterday. These could all be warning signs of a complication. Later that morning, she approached Nurse Patel at the main desk. The head nurse was busy reviewing charts, her face set in its usual serious expression. "Excuse me, Ms. Patel? I noticed some concerning changes in Mr. Harrington's condition this morning," Maya said, keeping her voice low. Nurse Patel barely glanced up. "Such as?" Maya explained her observations in detail, but with each point she could see the nurse's expression growing more dismissive. "Jenkins, Mr. Harrington just had heart surgery. Of course he's tired and a bit disoriented," Nurse Patel said when Maya finished. "His vitals are within acceptable ranges and Dr. Powell saw him yesterday. But the bluish color to his fingernails could be poor circulation, lighting in the room, or even the cold. It's nothing to worry about." Nurse Patel handed her another patient's chart. "Room 412 needs their dressing changed. Please focus on your assigned tasks." Maya took the chart, trying not to show her frustration. Maybe she was overreacting. After all, Nurse Patel had 20 years of experience and Dr. Powell was one of the best surgeons in the state. But the worry stayed with her through the morning. During her lunch break, she looked up post-cardiac surgery complications on her phone, reading about the warning signs of everything from infection to pericardial effusion, fluid buildup around the heart. In the afternoon, she saw Dr. Powell in the hallway heading toward his office. Taking a deep breath, she approached him. "Dr. Powell, could I speak with you for a moment about Mr. Harrington?" The doctor stopped, checking his watch with a slight frown. "What about him?" Once again, Maya detailed her observations. The doctor listened, but she could tell by his expression that he wasn't taking her concerns seriously. "Jenkins, isn't it?" he said when she finished. "I appreciate your attention to detail, but Mr. Harrington's recovery is progressing normally. His latest lab results show nothing concerning. But the bluish tint to his fingers and the confusion are common after surgery," he interrupted. "The anesthesia can take days to fully leave the system. especially in older patients. And the cold air conditioning in these rooms often affects circulation. He patted her shoulder in a way that felt condescending. You're new here, right? Still learning. That's good. But try not to jump to conclusions. Mr. Harrington has the best medical team money can buy watching over him. As he walked away, Maya felt her cheeks burning. She wasn't imagining things. And she wasn't just learning. She had graduated at the top of her class and had worked in a busy emergency room before coming to Westlake. Was it because she was new? Or was it something else? Maya was the only black medical professional on the recovery floor. She tried not to think that way, but sometimes it was hard to ignore how differently her observations were treated compared to those from other staff. During her evening rounds, Maya returned to Harrington's room. The billionaire was sitting up in bed talking on his phone, but she immediately noticed he looked worse. The bluish tint had spread slightly, and his breathing seemed more labored than that morning. I'll need to check your vitals again, Mr. Harrington, she said after he ended his call. Again? Feels like you people are in here every hour, he grumbled. But he held out his arm for the blood pressure cuff. His blood pressure was lower than that morning. Not drastically, but enough to note. His heart rate was slightly elevated too. How are you feeling compared to this morning? She asked. He shrugged. Tired, can't seem to get comfortable. He shifted in bed, then stopped mid-movement, wincing. Bit more sore, I guess. Any trouble thinking clearly? Any confusion? He looked annoyed at the question. I just negotiated a multi-million-dollar deal on that phone call. My mind is fine. But Maya noticed he had to pause several times during their conversation as if gathering his thoughts. And when she asked what he'd had for lunch, he couldn't remember. Back at the nurse's station, Maya updated his chart with her new observations. Lisa, another medical assistant, glanced over her shoulder. Writing a novel about the VIP? She joked. I'm worried about him, Maya admitted. I think he might be developing complications. Lisa rolled her eyes. The doctors checked him an hour ago. He's fine. Trust me, if anything was wrong with that guy, we'd have specialists flying in from everywhere. But, look, Lisa lowered her voice. I get it. You're trying to make an impression. But hunting for problems with our highest profile patient isn't the way to do it. Just do your job and let the doctors do theirs. Maya felt a knot forming in her stomach. Nobody was listening. She knew what she was seeing. These weren't normal recovery symptoms. They were subtle, yes, but they were there and they were getting worse. At the end of her shift, she made one last check on Harrington. He was sleeping, his breathing shallow. The monitor showed his oxygen levels were lower, though still within what most would consider an acceptable range. But combined with everything else she'd observed throughout the day, it painted a worrying picture. As Maya drove home that night, her mind kept going back to Mr. Harrington. Should she have pushed harder? Said something to someone else? What if something happened overnight? She thought about her grandmother who had always told her, trust your gut, child. God gave you instincts for a reason. Right now, her instincts were screaming that something was wrong with Victor Harrington, and tomorrow, no matter what anyone thought of her, she would make sure someone took her seriously. Because sometimes being right mattered more than being liked. And sometimes saving a life meant taking a risk. Maya arrived at work the next morning with a knot in her stomach. She'd barely slept, her mind racing with worry about Mr. Harrington. The morning sky was still dark as she pulled into the employee parking lot, arriving 30 minutes before her shift was scheduled to begin. She wanted to check on him first thing, before the usual morning chaos began. The hospital hallways were quieter at this hour, with only the night shift staff finishing their rounds. Maya nodded to a tired-looking nurse as she made her way to the VIP wing. Outside Harrington's door, she paused to collect herself. What if she was wrong? What if she was making a big deal out of nothing? She'd look foolish, maybe even jeopardize her position at the center. But what if she was right? She knocked softly and entered. The room was dimly lit, with only a small lamp glowing in the corner. Harrington was awake, propped up against his pillows, looking out the window at the city lights. Mr. Harrington, I'm Maya from yesterday. I came to check how you're doing. He turned slowly, and Maya's concern immediately deepened. His face looked puffy, and the bluish tint around his lips was unmistakable now. Not iffy. Ailing great, he admitted, his words slightly slurred. Called the night nurse twice, said everything, normal. Maya quickly checked the monitoring equipment. His blood pressure had dropped further since yesterday. And his oxygen levels were lower too. Still within what many would consider the acceptable range, but the downward trend was alarming. "I'm going to do a full check of your vitals, okay?" she said, keeping her voice calm despite her growing alarm. As she worked, she noticed how his ankles looked swollen, another new symptom. When she pressed lightly on his skin, it left an indentation that was slow to fill back in, a classic sign of fluid retention. "Mr. Harrington, have you been feeling short of breath?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Started last night. Thought it was just anxiety. And have you been feeling confused or having trouble remembering things?" "Couldn't remember my assistant's name yesterday," he admitted. Known her 7 years. Maya documented everything, her writing quick but precise. These weren't subtle signs anymore. Something was definitely wrong, and it was getting worse. "I'm going to speak with the doctor right away," she told him. "These symptoms need immediate attention. They all say." "I'm fine," he muttered, closing his eyes briefly as if the conversation had exhausted him. "Well, I don't think you are," Maya said firmly, "and I'm not going to stop until someone listens." She left the room and headed straight for the nurse's station where Nurse Chen, the night supervisor, was finishing her shift. "Mr. Harrington's condition has deteriorated overnight," Maya said without preamble. "He needs to be seen by a doctor immediately." Nurse Chen looked up from her computer, clearly annoyed by Maya's tone. Mr. Harrington was checked at 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. His vitals were within acceptable parameters. "They may be acceptable, but they're trending downward," Maya insisted, showing her the notes she'd made. "Look at the pattern over the last 24 hours. His oxygen is dropping, his blood pressure is lower, he has edema in his ankles, and the cyanosis has spread." Nurse Chen glanced at the notes with a frown. "These changes are minimal. Post-surgical patients often show fluctuations. Not like this," Maya said. "Not with confusion and shortness of breath, too." "These are classic signs of what?" Nurse Chen interrupted. "You're a medical assistant, not a cardiologist. Dr. Powell will do his rounds in an hour. If you're concerned, you can mention it to him then." Maya felt her frustration rising. An hour could make a difference. Mr. Harrington needs attention now. "That's not your call to make," Nurse Chen said firmly. "Now I need to finish my handover notes." Maya stepped back, trying to control her emotions. Getting angry wouldn't help Harrington. She needed to think strategically. She returned to her cart and began her morning duties, but her mind was working overtime. As she wheeled the cart down the hallway, she spotted Dr. Williams, the chief physician, stepping out of the elevator. He wasn't Harrington's doctor, but he outranked everyone else on the floor. Taking a deep breath, she approached him. "Dr. Williams? I'm sorry to bother you, but I have a serious concern about a patient that I believe needs immediate attention." The doctor paused, looking at her with slight impatience. "And you are?" "Maya Jenkins, medical assistant. It's about Mr. Harrington in the VIP wing. His condition has been deteriorating since yesterday, but no one seems to be taking it seriously." Dr. Williams checked his watch. "And Mr. Harrington is Dr. Powell's patient. Have you spoken to him?" "I tried yesterday, but he dismissed my concerns. The symptoms have gotten worse since then." "What symptoms exactly?" Maya listed them quickly but thoroughly. The dropping blood pressure and oxygen levels, the bluish tint to his skin, the confusion, the shortness of breath, the edema. Dr. Williams's expression changed as she spoke, becoming more focused. "Those could indicate several serious complications." "Have you documented these observations?" "Yes, sir. Everything's in my notes, including the timeline showing how they've progressed." He nodded briskly. "Show me." Maya felt a surge of relief as she led him toward Harrington's room. Finally, someone was listening. Before they reached the door, they were intercepted by Nurse Patel, who looked surprised and then concerned to see them together. "Dr. Williams, is everything all right? Ms. Jenkins here has raised some concerns about Mr. Harrington that I'd like to look into," he explained. Nurse Patel's lips tightened. "I wasn't aware there were any concerns serious enough to bother you with, Doctor. Mr. Harrington's care is well managed." "That remains to be seen," Dr. Williams said coolly. "I'd like to examine him myself." As they entered the room, Harrington was attempting to stand up, looking disoriented. He swayed dangerously, and Maya rushed forward to steady him. "Mr. Harrington, please sit down," she said, guiding him back to the bed. "The doctor is here to see you. Needed bathroom," he mumbled, his breathing now visibly labored. Dr. Williams stepped forward, introducing himself as he began a quick examination. His experienced hands moved efficiently, checking Harrington's pulse, listening to his chest, examining his eyes and fingernails. "Mr. Harrington, I'm concerned about your symptoms," he said after a few minutes. "I'd like to order some additional tests immediately, but I'm supposed to go home tomorrow." Harrington protested weakly. "That may need to be postponed," Dr. Williams said firmly. He turned to Nurse Patel. "I want an urgent echocardiogram and chest x-ray and page Dr. Powell. He needs to be here now." The nurse nodded, suddenly all efficiency as she left to make the arrangements. Dr. Williams turned to Maya. "You were right to bring this to my attention. These symptoms are consistent with pericardial effusion, fluid building up around the heart. It's a rare but serious complication after this type of procedure." Maya felt a complicated mix of emotions, relief that Harrington would now get proper care, but also anger that it had taken this long for someone to listen. "Should I have pushed harder yesterday?" she asked quietly. Dr. Williams gave her a thoughtful look. "The signs were subtle at first from what you've described, but they created a pattern that shouldn't have been ignored. You showed good clinical judgment." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Harrington was wheeled down for emergency tests, which confirmed Dr. Williams's suspicions. A slow leak was allowing fluid to build up around his heart, gradually compressing it and reducing its ability to pump effectively. If left untreated for another day, it could have been fatal. As Harrington was prepared for an emergency procedure to drain the fluid, Maya found herself pulled into a tense meeting with Dr. Powell. "Nurse Patel and Dr. Williams, why wasn't this caught earlier?" Dr. Williams demanded, looking at Dr. Powell. "The symptoms must have developed overnight," Dr. Powell said defensively. "He was fine when I saw him yesterday afternoon." "Actually, he wasn't," Maya said quietly but firmly. "I tried to tell you about the early signs yesterday." Dr. Powell looked uncomfortable. "Your observations weren't specific enough to indicate a serious problem." "They were the beginning of a pattern," Dr. Williams countered. "One that Ms. Jenkins recognized, documented, and attempted to report. Had she not brought it directly to me this morning, we might be dealing with a very different outcome." Maya stood straighter, feeling a strange mix of vindication and lingering frustration. She had been right, but being right wasn't enough in a system that didn't value every voice equally. As she walked back to her station later, Nurse Chen stopped her. "Good catch with Harrington," she said, not quite meeting Maya's eyes. You saw something the rest of us missed." Maya nodded, accepting the closest thing to an apology she was likely to get. "It wasn't about being right," she said. "It was about making sure he was safe." But as she continued her rounds that day, she couldn't help wondering how many other patients might have suffered because someone like her, young, black, junior staff, wasn't listened to when they spoke up. The hospital cafeteria buzzed with lunchtime conversations as Maya sat alone at a corner table, picking at her salad. Word had spread quickly about what happened with Harrington. Some staff members had stopped by her station to congratulate her, while others seemed to avoid eye contact entirely. Maya wasn't sure which reaction made her more uncomfortable. She looked up to see Nurse Chen approaching with her lunch tray. The night supervisor hesitated, then gestured to the empty chair across from Maya. "Mind if I join you?" Maya nodded, surprised. Nurse Chen had never sought out her company before. "How's Mr. Harrington doing?" Maya asked after an awkward silence. "Stable," Nurse Chen replied. "The procedure went well. They drained nearly 400 cc of fluid from around his heart." She set down her fork. Not many people would have pushed as hard as you did." Maya shrugged. "I just did what anyone should have done." "But that's just it, not everyone would have." Nurse Chen lowered her voice. "Especially not someone in your position." The words hung between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Maya knew exactly what Nurse Chen was referring to. Her junior status, her race, the way these things often led to her being overlooked or dismissed. "Dr. Williams wants to see you after your shift," Nurse Chen added. "His office, 4:30. Maya's stomach tightened. "Did he say why?" "No, but I wouldn't worry." "You saved Harrington's life." Nurse Chen attempted a smile. "That's got to count for something around here." For the rest of her shift, Maya found it hard to focus. Had she broken some hospital protocol by going directly to Dr. Williams? Would there be consequences despite the positive outcome? At exactly 4:30, she knocked on Dr. Williams's office door, her heart pounding. "Come in," called a voice from inside. Maya entered to find not just Dr. Williams, but also the hospital administrator, Mrs. Torres, sitting behind the desk. Their expressions gave nothing away. "Please, sit down," Dr. Williams said, gesturing to an empty chair. Maya sat, folding her hands in her lap to hide their slight trembling. "Ms. Jenkins," Mrs. Torres began, "I understand you were instrumental in identifying Mr. Harrington's post-surgical complication. I just noticed some warning signs," Maya said carefully. "Signs that several more experienced staff members missed," Dr. Williams pointed out, "or chose to ignore." Mrs. Torres nodded slowly. "Mr. Harrington's personal physician arrived an hour ago. He confirmed that your observations likely saved his patient from a critical situation." Maya exhaled slightly. This didn't sound like she was in trouble. "However," Mrs. Torres continued, her tone shifting, "there are proper channels for raising concerns about patient care. Bypassing the chain of command can create confusion." And there it was. Maya felt her shoulders tense again. "With all due respect," she said carefully, "I tried to use the proper channels. I spoke to Nurse Patel and Dr. Powell. Neither one took my concerns seriously." "That's what we want to discuss," Dr. Williams interjected. "This situation has highlighted some potential issues in our communication protocols." Mrs. Torres leaned forward. "The truth is, Ms. Jenkins, we've had similar incidents before. Junior staff observations being dismissed, concerns being ignored until they become emergencies." She exchanged a glance with Dr. Williams. "Often these dismissals seem to affect certain staff members more than others." Maya met her gaze steadily. "You mean staff members who look like me?" A moment of silence followed. Then Dr. Williams nodded. "We can't ignore the pattern, and today made it impossible to pretend otherwise. What happened with Mr. Harrington could have been a tragedy," Mrs. Torres said. "Instead, it's become an opportunity. We're forming a new patient advocacy committee to review our protocols and recommend changes. We'd like you to be part of it." Maya blinked in surprise. "Me? You demonstrated exactly the kind of patient-centered thinking we need," Dr. Williams explained. "Your perspective would be valuable." Before Maya could respond, there was a knock at the door. Dr. Williams called for the person to enter. A tall man in an expensive suit walked in, his presence immediately filling the room. Maya recognized him instantly from news photos. Harrington's right-hand man and chief operating officer, Philip Reeves. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. "I was told I could find Ms. Jenkins here." Mrs. Torres stood. "Mr. Reeves, we were just finishing up. What can we do for you?" Reeves turned his attention to Maya. "Ms. Jenkins, Mr. Harrington would like to speak with you. He's asked me to escort you to his room if you're available." Maya glanced at Dr. Williams, who nodded. "We can continue this discussion tomorrow. Go ahead." As they walked through the hospital corridors, Reeves said nothing. Maya's mind raced with possibilities. What could Harrington want? To thank her? To question her? To complain? When they reached the VIP suite, the door was guarded by a security officer who nodded to Reeves. Inside, the room had been transformed. Medical equipment had been supplemented with multiple laptops, phones, and tablets. A woman in a crisp business suit was speaking quietly into a headset in one corner. Harrington himself looked dramatically better than he had that morning. Some color had returned to his face, and though he still had an IV and monitoring equipment attached, he was sitting up and alert. "Ms. Jenkins," he said, gesturing for her to approach. "Please come in." The businesswoman slipped out, closing the door behind her and leaving Maya alone with Harrington and Reeves. "I understand I have you to thank for being alive," Harrington said directly. Maya shifted uncomfortably. "I was just doing my job, sir." "No," Harrington said firmly. "Your job was to take my vitals and change my sheets. Your job wasn't to recognize a life-threatening condition that specialists missed. Your job wasn't to persist when everyone told you to be quiet." Maya wasn't sure how to respond to that. "I've been thinking about what happened," Harrington continued, "about why no one listened to you. Phil here has been filling me in on some of the dynamics at play." Reeves cleared his throat. "Mr. Harrington has asked me to look into the hospital's track record on diversity and inclusion. The initial findings are not impressive." "That doesn't surprise me," Maya said quietly. Harrington studied her for a moment. "Tell me, Miss Jenkins, what are your career goals?" The question caught her off guard. "I'm working to become a nurse. Eventually, I'd like to be a nurse practitioner." "And what's stopping you?" Maya gave a small laugh. Money, mostly. I'm paying off my medical assistant certification while saving for nursing school. It takes time. Harrington nodded thoughtfully. I'm good at recognizing talent, Ms. Jenkins. It's how I built my company. When I see someone with exceptional skills, I invest in them. He glanced at Reeves. Phil, tell her about the foundation idea. Reeves stepped forward. Mr. Harrington would like to establish a scholarship fund for underrepresented professionals in healthcare. The details are still being worked out, but the first recipient has already been selected. He looked pointedly at Maya. Maya's breath caught. I don't understand. It's simple, Harrington said. You saved my life by seeing what everyone else missed. I want to invest in your future so you can do the same for others. Full tuition for nursing school, living expenses, and a guaranteed position at one of my company's healthcare divisions when you graduate. The room seemed to spin slightly. That's incredibly generous, but it's not generosity, Harrington interrupted. It's good business. People with your observational skills and courage are rare. I want them working for me, not changing sheets in a hospital that doesn't value them. Maya felt overwhelmed. This morning she'd been worried about losing her job. Now her entire future was potentially changing. There's one condition, Harrington added. The scholarship will bear your name and you'll help select future recipients. I want this to be more than just my money fixing a problem. I want it to be the beginning of systemic change. The Jenkins Scholarship, Reeves elaborated. For underrepresented medical professionals, Maya tried to process what she was hearing. Her name on a scholarship fund? Her judgment helping to select recipients? It seemed unreal. Why would you do this? She asked finally. Harrington's expression turned serious. Because systems don't change unless they're forced to. Sometimes that force comes from tragedy. Someone dies because the wrong person was ignored. This time we got lucky. You refused to be ignored and I lived. He gestured to the room around them. I have the resources to turn that luck into something meaningful. The question is, are you willing to be part of it? Maya thought about all the times she'd been dismissed or overlooked. About other healthcare workers like her who faced the same barriers every day. About patients whose lives might depend on those voices being heard. Yes, she said finally, her voice stronger than she expected. I am, Harrington smiled. Good. Phil will work out the details with you. He shifted slightly, wincing as he did so. Now my doctors tell me I need to rest. Apparently nearly dying takes a lot out of you. As Maya left the room, her mind still reeling from the conversation, she nearly bumped into Dr. Powell in the hallway. He looked uncomfortable. Ms. Jenkins, I hear congratulations are in order. Maya met his gaze directly. Thank you, Dr. Powell. He hesitated, clearly struggling with what to say next. I may have been hasty in dismissing your concerns yesterday. Yes, Maya said simply. You were. She walked past him, head held high. Tomorrow would bring paperwork and meetings and the beginning of whatever this new chapter might hold. But for now, she just wanted to go home and call her grandmother with the news that everything was about to change. 3 days later, Maya stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of her new blouse. She hardly recognized herself, not because of the clothes, but because of the confidence in her eyes. So much had changed since that morning when she'd first noticed the subtle signs of Harrington's complication. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from her grandmother. Proud of you, baby girl. Your grandfather is watching from heaven and smiling big. Maya smiled, blinking back unexpected tears. Her grandfather had been the one who'd first sparked her interest in medicine, letting her listen to his heart with an old stethoscope when she was just 6 years old. Listen carefully, he'd told her. Sometimes the body whispers its problems before it shouts them. Those words had stayed with her, guiding her observations with Harrington. And now they'd changed the course of her life. She arrived at the hospital earlier than usual, nodding to the security guard who suddenly seemed to know her name. In just days, her status had shifted. People who had barely acknowledged her existence now greeted her warmly. It was strange how saving one important life could suddenly make her own life more visible. As she walked toward the administrative wing for her first meeting with the Patient Advocacy Committee, she passed Harrington's room. The door was open and she could see a flurry of activity inside. Men and women in business attire moved about efficiently, speaking in hushed tones. Harrington was being discharged today, his recovery now stable enough for him to continue at home with private nursing care. She paused at the door, not wanting to interrupt but curious about how he was doing. Harrington spotted her and waved her in. "Ms. Jenkins," he called out. "Perfect timing. I was hoping to see you before I left." The business people immediately stepped back, creating a path for her. Maya entered, suddenly aware of how many eyes were on her. "How are you feeling, Mr. Harrington?" she asked. "Much better, thanks to you." He gestured to a woman standing nearby. "This is Anita Reynolds, my foundation director. She'll be working with you on the scholarship program. Everything's been arranged with the hospital for your schedule adjustments while you begin your nursing program." Maya shook the woman's hand, still not quite believing this was real. "Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. The first round of scholarship applications will open next month," Reynolds explained. "We'd like you to help develop the selection criteria and be part of the committee that reviews candidates." "Of course," Maya said, though she wondered how she'd find time for everything. Between her job, the new patient advocacy committee, and now the scholarship program, not to mention starting nursing school, her life would be busier than ever. Harrington seemed to read her thoughts. "Don't worry about the logistics. Phil has worked it all out with your administration. Your schedule will be adjusted to accommodate everything." He smiled. "Consider it my way of ensuring you don't burn out before you can fulfill your potential." Before she could respond, Dr. Williams appeared at the door. "Excuse me, Maya, the committee is gathering, and Mr. Harrington, your transport team is ready whenever you are." Maya nodded to Harrington. "Good luck with your recovery." "Good luck with changing this place," he replied. "Something tells me your job might be harder than mine." The meeting room was already half full when Maya arrived. She recognized faces from different departments: nurses, doctors, administrators, and support staff. Dr. Williams gestured for her to take a seat near the front. "Now that we're all here," Mrs. Torres began, "I want to thank everyone for agreeing to be part of this committee. What happened with Mr. Harrington highlighted serious flaws in our communication structures, flaws that could have had tragic consequences." She looked directly at Maya. "It also showed us the importance of listening to every voice on our team, regardless of position or background. This committee has been given authority to review and revise our protocols to ensure this kind of oversight doesn't happen again." Dr. Williams stepped forward. "We're going to start by reviewing similar incidents from the past 2 years. Cases where concerns were raised but not properly addressed." He distributed folders to everyone. "You'll notice a disturbing pattern in who raised these concerns and how they were handled." Maya opened her folder and began reading. Case after case showed a similar story: junior staff or staff of color raising valid concerns that were dismissed or ignored. Some had resulted in near misses, others in actual patient harm. "The pattern was undeniable. This is worse than I expected," said one of the senior nurses, looking troubled. "It's exactly what some of us have been trying to say for years," replied a Filipino respiratory therapist. But nobody was listening. The room grew tense as people began to share their experiences. Stories of being talked over, second-guessed, or simply ignored. Maya listened, recognizing her own experiences and theirs. "The question now," Dr. Williams said when everyone had spoken, "is how do we fix it?" The discussion continued for hours, with suggestions ranging from anonymous reporting systems to mandatory bias training for all staff. Maya mostly listened, taking it all in. This was bigger than her, bigger than Harrington. This was about changing an entire culture. When the meeting finally ended, Maya gathered her notes, her mind spinning with everything she'd heard. As people filed out, Dr. Powell stepped in, looking hesitant. "Maya, do you have a moment?" She nodded, curious about what he wanted. When the room had emptied, Dr. Powell sat across from her. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since the incident with Harrington," he began, "about why I dismissed your concerns so quickly." Maya waited, giving him space to continue. "I'd like to say it was just because you're junior staff, but I know that's not the whole truth." He looked uncomfortable but pressed on. "I've been reviewing my own interactions with staff, and I've noticed patterns I'm not proud of. It takes courage to admit that," Maya said quietly. "Not as much courage as it took for you to stand your ground when everyone was telling you to back down." He sighed. "I'm one of the people who needs to change if this hospital is going to improve. I know that now." "We all have biases, Dr. Powell," Maya said. "The important thing is recognizing them and working to overcome them." He nodded. I've asked to be part of the bias training development team. I think my perspective as someone who needed to be shown his blind spots might be useful. Maya felt a surprising sense of respect for him. It couldn't have been easy to come to her like this. I think that's a great idea, she said. Real change has to happen at every level. As she left the administration wing, Maya's phone buzzed with another text. This one from an unknown number. Ms. Jenkins, Phil Reeves here. Mr. Harrington would like to invite you to the official announcement of the scholarship fund next week. Car will pick you up Tuesday at 9 a.m. Please confirm. Maya stopped in the middle of the hallway, suddenly overwhelmed. Just a week ago, she'd been worried about making her rent payment. Now she was texting with billionaires and serving on hospital committees. It was almost too much to process. She spotted Nurse Chen coming down the hall and tried to step aside, but the nurse stopped directly in front of her. I heard about the committee meeting, Nurse Chen said. How did it go? It was intense, Maya admitted, but good. I think real changes might come from it. Nurse Chen nodded. That's what we need. She hesitated, then added, Listen, some of us more experienced nurses have been talking. We want you to know we've got your back. What you did for Harrington was brave, but what you're doing for this hospital is even braver. I'm just trying to make things better, Maya said. That's always harder than keeping things the same, Nurse Chen replied. Trust me, I know. I've been fighting these battles for 20 years. She gave Maya a rare smile. But it's easier when you're not fighting alone. As Maya continued toward the locker room to change for her shift, she felt a strange new feeling settling over her. It wasn't just pride or satisfaction, though those were there too. It was a sense of purpose, stronger than she'd ever felt before. Her phone buzzed once more. A text from her grandmother. Don't forget your roots while you're reaching for the stars. Maya smiled. No matter how much changed around her, some things would stay the same. Her family's support, her dedication to her patients, her commitment to making a difference. She typed a quick reply to Reeves confirming the Tuesday pickup, then slipped her phone into her pocket and pushed open the door to the ward. There were patients waiting, and whatever else she might become in the future, right now she was still Maya Jenkins' medical assistant. And she had work to do. The gleaming glass headquarters of Harrington Technologies stood like a mountain of light against the morning sky. Maya stepped out of the black car that had picked her up, smoothing down her new suit jacket nervously. She'd never been inside a building this impressive before. Ms. Jenkins? A young woman with a tablet approached. I'm Leah, Mr. Reeves's assistant. I'll show you where to go. Maya followed her through security and into an elevator with walls so polished she could see her reflection. 6 months had passed since the day she'd noticed Harrington's symptoms. 6 months of whirlwind changes that sometimes left her breathless. Everyone's excited to meet you, Leah said as the elevator climbed smoothly. Your story has become somewhat legendary around here. Maya smiled politely, still uncomfortable with her newfound fame. The scholarship announcement last month had put her face in the news. First Jenkins scholar saves billionaire's life was how one headline had put it, though Maya thought that was a bit dramatic. She'd just been doing her job. The elevator doors opened onto a floor bustling with activity. People moved purposefully between glass-walled meeting rooms and open workspaces. Leah led her toward a large conference room where several people were already gathered. Ms. Jenkins, Reeves came forward to greet her. Perfect timing. We're just about to begin the final review before the big announcement. Maya nodded, taking in the room. A long table was surrounded by people in business attire, all looking at her with interest. At the head of the table sat Harrington himself, looking remarkably healthy compared to when she'd last seen him. Maya, he said warmly, standing to greet her. Good to see you. Please take a seat. She sat in the empty chair beside him, feeling out of place despite everyone's welcoming smiles. As you all know, Harrington began, addressing the room. Today marks the official launch of the Healthcare Voices initiative. What started as a single scholarship has grown into something much bigger. On the wall, a screen lit up with the initiative's logo. A stylized stethoscope formed into the shape of a speech bubble. 6 months ago, this young woman saved my life by speaking up when everyone around her said to stay quiet. Harrington glanced at Maya. It made me realize how many lives might be lost because the right voices aren't being heard. That's why we've expanded from the Jenkins Scholarship to this comprehensive program. Reeves stood and took over the presentation. The initiative now has three main components. First, the Scholarship Fund, which will support 50 underrepresented students in healthcare fields annually. Second, a grant program for hospitals to implement improved communication protocols and bias training. And third, a research division focused on studying and addressing healthcare disparities. Maya listened with growing amazement. When Harrington had first mentioned creating a scholarship in her name, she'd imagined something small, maybe helping a few students each year. This was beyond anything she'd envisioned. The total initial investment is $75 million over 5 years, Reeves concluded, with additional funding based on program outcomes. The room broke into applause and all eyes turned to Maya. "Would you like to say a few words?" Harrington asked quietly. Maya hadn't prepared anything, but she stood, gathering her thoughts. "When I first noticed Mr. Harrington's symptoms, I wasn't trying to be a hero," she began. "I was just doing what I was trained to do, observe and report. The problem wasn't that I saw something special. The problem was that no one was listening." She looked around the room, making eye contact with several people. "That happens every day in healthcare. Someone notices something important, but their voice gets lost because of who they are or what position they hold. Patients suffer because of it. Some die because of it." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "This initiative isn't just about giving opportunities to people like me. It's about making sure every voice in healthcare gets heard, especially when lives are at stake. It's about changing a system that too often decides whose observations matter based on the wrong criteria." When she finished, the room was silent for a moment before erupting into more enthusiastic applause. Harrington nodded approvingly. "That's exactly why you're the perfect person to help lead this," he said. "You understand what's really at stake." After the meeting, Maya was introduced to the team who would be running the initiative. She would serve as an advisor while continuing her nursing studies and hospital work. It was a lot to balance, but she was determined to make it work. As the day wound down, Harrington asked her to join him for a private conversation in his office, a spacious room with windows overlooking the city. "How are things at the hospital?" he asked as they sat in comfortable chairs away from his desk. "Changing," Maya replied. "Slowly but changing. The new reporting system is in place. Staff can flag concerns anonymously, and they're tracked until resolved. No more dismissals without documentation." "And how are people treating you?" Maya considered the question. "Differently. Some better, some carefully, like they're not sure what to make of me anymore." Harrington nodded. "That happens when you disrupt the status quo. Not everyone will thank you for it." "I'm not looking for thanks," Maya said. "I just want things to improve." "They will." Harrington leaned forward. "But I wanted to talk to you about something else. Your future." Maya waited, curious. "You'll finish your nursing degree in 2 years, correct?" She nodded. "And then? What's your plan?" "Nurse practitioner training," she said. "Eventually, I'd like to work in community health care, maybe open a clinic in my old neighborhood." Harrington smiled. "That's what I thought you'd say. Which is why I've set aside additional funding specifically for that purpose. When you're ready, the resources will be there to make it happen." Maya stared at him, stunned. "Why would you do that?" "Because talent like yours shouldn't be limited by finances," he said simply. "And because communities like yours deserve the best healthcare providers." Maya left Harrington Technologies that evening with her head spinning. The car dropped her off not at her apartment but at the hospital, where she was scheduled for the evening shift. The contrast between the gleaming corporate headquarters and the familiar hospital corridors was stark. As she changed into her scrubs, her phone buzzed with a text from her grandmother. "Remember, no matter where you go or what you achieve, your purpose is to help people. Everything else is just details." Maya smiled, feeling grounded by the reminder. Her grandmother always knew exactly what she needed to hear. The evening shift was busy but routine. Maya checked on patients, recorded vitals, and assisted the nurses with various tasks. No one treated her differently here. To the patients, she was just another caregiver, not the face of a multi-million-dollar initiative. Near the end of her shift, she was called to help with a new admission, an elderly woman with pneumonia. As Maya took her vitals, she noticed the woman's wedding ring was causing her finger to swell. "We should remove this before it gets too tight," Maya explained gently. "My husband gave me that ring 60 years ago," the woman said, her voice weak but determined. "I've never taken it off." "I promise we'll keep it safe," Maya assured her. and put it back on as soon as the swelling goes down. The woman studied Maya's face, then nodded slowly. You have kind eyes. I trust you. As Maya carefully removed the ring and placed it in a labeled envelope, Nurse Chen appeared in the doorway. Jenkins, can I see you when you're done here? Maya finished with the patient, made sure she was comfortable, then stepped into the hallway. What's up? We've got a situation in room 302, Nurse Chen explained. Patient with unusual symptoms. The resident thinks it's just anxiety, but the night shift assistant disagrees. Maya raised an eyebrow. And you're telling me because after what happened with Harrington, we've got a new protocol, remember? When there's a disagreement, we bring in a third observer. I thought you'd be appropriate given your history. A smile spread across Maya's face. The new protocol is actually being followed? Not by everyone, not all the time, Nurse Chen admitted. But more than before. It's a start. As they walked toward room 302, Maya felt a wave of emotion. This small change in how things worked and how people's concerns were treated. This was what really mattered, more than scholarships or initiatives or news stories. This was the beginning of real change. The night assistant, a young Hispanic man named Luis who had started just a month ago, looked relieved when Maya entered the room. I noticed his breathing pattern changed when he laid flat, Luis explained, pointing to the patient, a middle-aged man who was currently sitting up in bed. And there's a faint whistling sound. The resident said it's just anxiety, but you think it might be something else, Maya finished for him. Let's take a look together. As she helped Luis demonstrate what he'd observed, Maya caught Nurse Chen watching from the doorway with an approving nod. The cycle was continuing. Another voice that might have been ignored was now being heard. Later, as Maya finally headed home under a sky turning pink with dawn, she thought about all the changes of the past 6 months. The scholarship, the initiative, her classes, the new hospital protocols. Each was important in its own way. But what mattered most was what had happened in room 302 tonight. A junior staff member had noticed something concerning, spoken up about it, and been taken seriously. No drama, no emergency, no billionaire needed, just a system working the way it should. And if Maya's actions with Harrington had helped make that possible, then perhaps all the attention and disruption had been worth it. Because in healthcare, listening to the right voice at the right time wasn't just about protocols or policies. Sometimes it was simply the difference between life and death.